Good morning, buenos dias, or good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Sayrah Namaste, and I'm the program co-director of the American Friends Service Committee New Mexico program.
Hello, everyone. I am Patrick Jaramillo, and I am, along with Sayrah, I'm the co-director of the New Mexico program. Thank you for taking time to be with us today.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to talking with you about the work we do in New Mexico, especially in the face of climate change. So we wanted to share a little bit about our program. At AFSC, we envision self-determined communities in New Mexico that have the capacity to feed and care for our children, our elders, and our neighbors, human, animal, and plant neighbors. And we support the empowerment of the people of New Mexico by accompanying the historic, land-based, and marginalized communities in their work to protect access to land and water, to grow food, especially to increase access to healthy food by vulnerable populations, to stimulate the local economy, and to develop grassroots leadership. And we do this by providing training, technical support, and infrastructure development, as well as policy advocacy and community organizing. And in our New Mexico program, we practice cooperative and sustainable organic farming with small-scale family farmers. We support that. And this avoids the monocropping and the chemical use, which are contributing factors to climate change. We also know that large agribusinesses and industrial agriculture are a major driver of climate change. So in our work, we're supporting the small family farms. And then we support these community members as they're building climate resilient practices to combat drought. We're in a mega drought here in New Mexico. And we support the alternative models of food production, that avoid the long distance of the transportation of food. And because our resources are scarce and we're in a drought, we also we work with others to protect water in New Mexico, and we oppose the privatization of water. We hope that these practices will be a model for how we can shift systems in the face of increasing climate change. And so much of what we do in AFSC New Mexico isn't new. And so our elders are always saying to us, like, this isn't new. These traditional practices, these sustainable methods, this is ancestral knowledge. This is the way that things were done in New Mexico with indigenous people and with Indo-Hispano communities. And so we want to accompany and support the return to those practices and the passing on of that knowledge. And a big part of that is water. We're in a desert. And so water is our most important resource. And there's a lot of battles over water. There's a lot of developers who would love to use the water for golf courses or development for sprawl. And so we have something very unique in New Mexico on our water system that's survived for centuries. And Patrick is going to share what that is.
Yeah, so like Sayrah said, a good chunk of our work in New Mexico is around farming. And in the desert, I mean, you need water to farm. And New Mexican society is an agrarian society. It has been land-based. And it was a farming community since before the American period. The backbone of the community, of the farming communities here, are what are called acequias, and that's it's a Spanish word that actually is an Arabic word. And so acequias they're really unique, and we're really lucky to have them in New Mexico, but they are not unique to New Mexico. They actually are all over the world. They're on, I think, every continent except Antarctica. And they came to New Mexico up from Mexico via Spain, across North Africa, and from Western Asia. And as I said, it's an Arabic word. The origin is in Arabic, al-sakia, and it means irrigation ditch or channel. The interesting thing, like so many things in Spanish or in non-English, is the word acequia means two different things. And it's the physical infrastructure, the physical irrigation channel, but it's also the community. And that's what's so important about the system as a water management system, and what makes it so precious in New Mexico is the mindset and the outlook, the worldview that governs the acequia system is a communal and a resilient system. And so it is managed communally. These canals were dug communally, and they're managed communally. as opposed to the Western Western way of measuring water, which is they quantify it and usually distributed to farmers by acre feet, or whatever the consumptive use of water is on the farmland. With the acequia system, everybody gets a time, an allotted time to irrigate. And what that does is that shares shortages, and that allows, so in good years, you know, you have the time to irrigate all your fields. In bad years or in drier years, everybody shares the shortage. So no one user is getting more than the other. And it's a really equitable system, and it really affirms that we're all in this together. The unique challenge that the acequias are facing now, and the New Mexicans and people in the Southwest are facing, is that climate change is not limited to just our stream systems. It's not limited to one acequia system. It's impacting the whole region. But they are resilient, and they have lasted, centuries. So people have been farming in New Mexico with farming with acequias for 400 years, and people have been practicing agriculture in New Mexico for 5,000 years. The indigenous people here have been growing food. The way I tell people is, before Walmart and before welfare, we were growing our own food. You know, this new unjust, inequitable food system is on purpose. This is not an accident, and so we have the means. We have the means to provide for ourselves. But what's at stake here is the mindset, where the acequia is based on the law of thirst, which means every living thing has a right to water. No one person has a right to deny another living thing, and not just people, but all living things have a right to access that water. And the acequia system affirms that, and this is in direct competition and direct contrast to the current system, the dominant regime now, which, when we say in New Mexico, water flows uphill to money. You know, there's a lot of development, the weapons industry, the tech, you know, Facebook and Intel have processing plants here, and they want to use the water for other things other than life-giving practices. So that's a little bit about the acequia system. I could go on. I would highly recommend Dr. Silvia Rodriguez, Dr. Jose Rivera, or Juan Esteban Arellano as resources if you want to learn more about the acequia system. You know, our work in New Mexico is not limited to that, but I just wanted to give that as a little bit of background, because it is pretty unique, and we're going to be mentioning that. So I just wanted to do that. Anyway.
Yeah, I appreciate just that historical context, because it's the historical context, but it's today too. So that is a big part of our work, is accompanying people in these traditional practices, which have been shown to be sustainable, which are an alternative to the dominant model that Patrick is describing that has been unsustainable and is driving climate change. And so that's really important that that's part of the work that we do, and why the AFSC program started in New Mexico in the 70s. And it's evolved in different ways over the decades. There have been times where this program was really involved in pushing back politically against developers that were coming in and taking the water for ski resorts, or the weapons industry, or just different sprawl. The organizing of the acequias, AFSC has been supportive of that process in the 80s and 90s, and that's one of our sister organizations, is the New Mexico Acequia Association. And then in its current form, we're really supporting these small-scale family farms and this alternative food system, because our current food system, the dominant food system, is a driver of climate change. It relies on industrial agriculture, on monocropping, on chemicals, on the exploitation of farm workers. And so we need to eat. We all need to eat. We're no longer an agrarian society where everyone's growing their own food. And so we can support, and we need to support, a food system that is sustainable, that doesn't drive climate change. And so that's what our day-to-day work looks like, is alongside these farmers. And some of that also looks like some new technologies. So our program has built almost, I think around 35. I think that's right, Patrick. Patrick has been the lead on our passive solar cold frame builds. And this allows farmers to grow in the winter, which we do have winter here in New Mexico. We are, we're high mountain area where we are in the South Valley of Albuquerque and in northern New Mexico and where the tribes are. And so this technology, it looks like a greenhouse to a lot of people, but it's passive solar. They can grow in the winter so that they have income all winter long and food all winter long. And we have programs where we link the farms to schools. We know that most children who eat school lunch are on the free and reduced lunch program because they're low income and they don't always have access to healthy, organic, local food. So the farm to school program is a program that we have. We also have a farm to early childhood program, specifically with the Head Starts. And to be a student at Head Start, you have to be in a low-income family. So we're linking farmers to the Head Start. During COVID, we've had a farm to food bank program supporting local farmers to stay economically viable in this huge economic downturn and getting their food to the people who most need it at the food banks. That's just some of what we do. And then this cooperative economic model that we are working with farmers, that the food system can be very cutthroat and competitive, and we don't want people to have graduated from the AFSC farmer training program where they spent a year with hands-on learning, building up each other's farms, learning how to do sustainable methods or relearning sustainable methods, and then to graduate and compete against each other for like a race to the bottom. So this cooperative economic model, if farmers want to create a co-op, we help incubate cooperatives so farmers can be working together instead of competing against each other. And this also helps them get larger markets than their small farm maybe could get on its own. By working together, they have enough quantity to supply a school system, to supply Head Start programs, food banks, large restaurants, hotels. Like they can reach these larger markets through this cooperative system. And again, historically, cooperation and communal collective power is the history of New Mexico. And so we are supporting that again and accompanying that process in today's very competitive, dominating, agribusiness model. Some of the things we've also done is with new technology, we have a partner actually kind of across the street. I'm in the office right now. It's an indigenous-led organization. It's a nonprofit that uses farming as part of their work. And they built a commercial kitchen. And that takes a lot of utilities to keep it cold. So we were able to raise the funds to put solar panels on it. So it's now a solarized commercial kitchen. So we're finding these new technologies with solar and then this old knowledge and important like sustainable knowledge about how to grow. So we're marrying the both in terms of addressing climate change.
Building on that, or in addition to that, one of the things, so as Sayrah mentioned, we're rooted in tradition, but we are moving forward into the future. And the traditional irrigation systems, you have a growing season, you have an irrigation season. Climate change is affecting that in that warmer springs mean the runoff is coming earlier. And if the runoff is coming earlier before you're able to plant, that water is not as usable. The monsoons are coming later. There's different things that are affecting the water availability. And so some of the things that we've been doing is adapting modern materials and modern techniques to the traditional ways. And as Sayrah mentioned with cold frames or any kind of season extension, that's on the economic side. That helps farmers provide income and provide healthy food to the community during the times that outside the normal growing season. So that we call a season extension. There's other things that we've done, like utilizing drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is great. It's not a panacea, and we still actually really recommend flood irrigation for recharging aquifers and for the health of the larger riparian area. But one of the things we've done, in addition to solarizing like cold storage, it's the tradition of sharing water along the acequia system is called the repartimiento. And usually an irrigator gets water once a week. It's typical on a good year. Bad years, it's between 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. And so what we've done is, in a couple cases, we have helped farmers. We've gotten storage tanks, and we'll siphon. We've gotten water from the acequia when it's running on the day that it runs. fill up the storage tanks, and then we have solar pumps to irrigate the crops as needed, as they need it. And then, you know, as the departamento comes up, they can fill their tanks. And it's just a way of adapting. And that's the name of the game right now. We're in such transition. It's all about adaptation. And, you know, like I said, we are rooted in these practices that have proven over centuries to be resilient. But we also need to be wise about how we utilize that resource. And so, yeah, using modern technology, solar, or the passive solar, or modern building techniques, modern landshaping techniques, all help to mitigate the impacts of changing weather patterns. So.
And we wanted to conclude because we know that climate change is a huge issue. It affects all of our communities. I see we have folks on today that are joining us from Colorado and New York and Palestine. And so it's affecting all of us, and it's a huge issue, and it can be really depressing. So Bo, if you could show the slide, we just wanted to show what our vision is for how do we move forward? Like, what are the things that we see in New Mexico that are important for what we could be doing, like the work that we're doing now, but also the changes that need to happen, not just at the individual level, but at the collective systemic level.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Excuse me, a little under the weather. The other thing we really advocate for is that land-based peoples are the decision makers and are at the front and helping make decisions and leaders, and not an afterthought. So many times leaders look for approval or try to force decisions down on us instead of having us at the table.
Mm-hmm. As we did today, we think it's really important that there be an understanding of our food systems that looks at the history. And we talk about the history in New Mexico, how the food system was created. But when we look across the country, we know that our food system was created through the genocide and removal of Native people off of their land, through the enslavement of people that were brought over from Africa and used for labor. So there's a whole way that our food system was created, currently the exploitation of farm workers. So we have to understand that history in order to address how we got to have the food system we have, because we don't want that system, right? We need to change that from the oppression that was used and still used in our current food system.
And I got a little lost here. I lost my slide.
Oh, okay. I think we talked about the AFSC systems. Yeah. That another part of our vision is. I'm sorry, Patrick. I know that you're getting.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. My apologies to everybody.
I can finish it out. Yeah, but the AFSC systems are respected. Yeah. There
you go. Okay, see, I found that slide now. Yeah, this has been a very long fight in New Mexico, and it's basically just respecting the people and the people who steward the land, and going back to what Sayrah was saying in terms of respecting and honoring the dignity of all those who grow, produce, process, cook, and serve our food. You know, the acequia systems are at the heart of that, and that's the heart of the community. And again, because it is a different value, it's about providing life and not providing wealth to people. It's not about extracting wealth. We really are it's a big chunk of our work is to ensure that these systems are respected and protected and funded, and because these are public institutions. These are governments. Actually, acequias are governments, as well as water management systems, and they have been under attack by those who want the water and want the land. So.
And then the last point that we'll make as we wrap up is that right now our food system is subsidized, and that's why it's cheaper to get food that's been grown across the world, sent on a ship, taken on a semi, and brought to our stores, cheaper than the food I could walk down the street and go buy from a local farmer. It's because it's subsidized. So we're subsidizing high fructose corn syrup, we're subsidizing feed for cattle, we're subsidizing things that drive health problems like obesity and diabetes. If we shifted those subsidies away from industrial agriculture towards the small family farms, towards the organic and local, we would see a tremendous shift and again, a driver of climate change, away from industrial ag into those who are not driving climate change. And so that's a vision that we have as well, is that we need to shift that to small regional food sheds, and we need to change our trade agreements. And those are things that our whole organization at AFSC is always working on, is what are the systemic changes at the US federal level and at the international level that need to happen in order to address climate change. So we appreciate you just hearing from our perspective here in New Mexico about what we're doing. And I think if there's any questions, you can put it in the chat. And yeah, thanks for coming today. I see that there is a question from Denver. Can you say more about the tension between life and profit and how leaders there navigate that tension? Yeah, that's a really great question. Patrick, do you want to take or I
yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that leaders navigate. I don't. No, that's just. I was gonna say they navigate it poorly, but that's not true. I'm just being. But really, you know, it's the high desert. We have limited resources. People are really attracted to this place because there is something, you know, they call it the land of enchantment, and there is I'll just be candid. This is holy land. I mean, this is a wonderful place, but it's because life is hard here. Life is really hard here, and so the sanctity and the preciousness of life is just really evident. But that doesn't, you know, that doesn't pay the bills, and people want to exploit this place. They want to build more houses for you know, they want to build the current system, like the current capitalist system, is grow. You know, in ecology or environmental science, there's a term called the carrying capacity, right? The environment can only sustain so much life. And if you try to squeeze that, like what we're doing, operating in a deficit, pumping groundwater, or mismanaging our resources, eventually you get to a place of collapse. And there is evidence. There's, you know, that has happened in New Mexico. Societies have collapsed because of lack of water. So it's, I don't know other to say. I mean, there's nothing unique or different about that tension, other than it really is pitting the value of life versus the value of a dollar, and that's at the heart of this country. No matter what anybody says rhetorically, it's money that motivates everything in this country, and that is in direct conflict to our values here.
Agreed. One thing I really am inspired by as someone who moved to New Mexico 15 years ago is that the fight to protect those values and to protect the idea that water is life and the water protectors is very strong. That the reason the acequias have survived centuries is because people have fought for that, and people from around the world come and like want to learn how that was done. And in this picture on the slide, this is Patrick and I in a tribe called Jenes Pueblo. Many of these people are water protectors in this picture, and they went to Standing Rock, and they're defending against Line 3, and they are defending the water here. And so when I think about the question that Jennifer Piper is asking about leadership, it's not so much leadership, I think, from elected people, but there's leadership in the communities, the acequia communities, and the tribal communities saying that we will defend our water, and water is life, and it's more important than profit. And so I just really appreciate the people, those water protectors on the front line. And I'm glad that at AFSC New Mexico, we can support that and accompany them.
Just a little bit about that. There's the other thing that I've mentioned before, just that tension, is there's what they call here wet water and paper water. And hydrological surveys done at the early part of the century, when there were, you know, quote, good years, had some quantified the amount of water, the surface water that was available during those years, and then they adjudicated rights. excuse me, I'm not going to talk much more, but but that tension, when we get really legalistic, people say, I have this water right, I have a right to divert, 35 acre feet out of the river onto my field. On a bad year, there's not 35 acre, there's not that much water, and so this is the source of a lot of conflict, it's been a lot of legal conflict and actual physical violence, and so as a peace building organization, being able to get into there and work on conflict resolution and work on this and affirming and strengthening this repartimiento, this system, this way of sharing, and understanding that like we are going to have to share this burden of deficit, is really important, because that's not the past. I mean, we're looking at the future, honestly, as resources get even more spread thin. But
I know thank you so much, everyone. If you want to learn more, we do have a webpage, afsc.org/New Mexico. And we also have a Facebook page, AFSCNM. So thanks so much for joining. This is a great conversation, and learn more by going there.